Gary, it's a pleasure to be here.
Welcome to Music City Online. I'm Nashville producer Gary Earl. With me tonight, Doak Turner. Now, Doak has had over a dozen songs cut since he arrived in Nashville. But along the way, he has become known as the networking expert. I think that's fair to say, wouldn't you?
Okay.
For example, go check The Complete Idiot's Guide to the Art of Songwriting. The chapter on networking is called Networking Tips by Doak Turner, even.
It is.
I would say that makes him an expert.
Thank you, Casey Kelly.
And not to mention, of course, many of you out there have this book and know John Brahaney. If you take a look on the back, one of the endorsements is by Doak, of course, too. John played, I think, a fairly important role in both of our being involved in songwriting and coming to Nashville.
Yes.
So,
yeah, one of the first books I read on songwriting was The Craft and Business of Songwriting, John Brahaney.
Cool.
Then the second edition, I got to know John.
Yeah.
And drove from Charlotte to Nashville to come over to meet him and to thank him.
Cool.
We struck up that friendship, and a dream came true on the back of that book.
Yeah, excellent. That's cool. I first spent John my first trip to L.A. He had the L.A. Songwriter Showcase.
Right.
And now you've done dozens of songwriter workshops yourself, too, right?
Yes.
And many of you out there have no doubt been to the long-running 112 consecutive months Third Sunday at 3 at Doak's house, where hundreds of songwriters would gather every month, literally.
That was a lot of fun for 9.5 years. That third Sunday at 3, those memories. And I still get people coming up talking to me and thanking me. And I'm learning new things that happened that I didn't even know happened as a result of the third Sundays.
Anyway, you're also the owner of Nashville Muse and the co-owner of MusicStartsHere.org.
Yes.
So you can check out Doak in a lot of places. Facebook, there's also doaksmusic.com, right? Mm-hmm. Where they can check out your music and buy it.
Right, doakmusic.com, right.
Yeah.
And,
exactly.
You mentioned Nashville Muse and Music Starts Here. Nashville Muse last almost 13 years sending out an email to over 3,000 people a week. Here's who's playing where. And what I've done with that recently is we brought back Music Starts Here with a couple partners, and now Nashville Muse is part of that site.
Yeah, terrific. Great site full of videos, how-to, all kinds of information.
Right, yeah. We have over 1,000 video interviews, a lot of pros giving advice.
Yeah.
Over 10,000 pages of content, and event section. And right now, as of October 2015, we have a database over 12,000 people.
Wow. So in becoming the man that knows about networking here in Music City, was that ever intentional, or did that just happen along the way while you're writing and meeting people and hosting events? And
that just happened. I remember back in probably the late 80s, mid 80s, Success magazine. Yeah. I remember seeing a cover, said networking. I said, wow, what is that? And then I just learned and worked real hard at the networking, what to do, what not to do, how to be positive, learn, and just various tips along the way.
Yeah. Now you had a background in radio before you came here to write, didn't you?
Yes. In the 80s through early 90s, I was a salesperson. I worked in sales and promotions in the radio world in Charleston, West Virginia, and in Charlotte.
So that probably helped a lot, too.
Oh, absolutely. That's what taught me everything that I know today about how to do events, how to promote, how to come up with ideas, marketing partnerships, and promotion. I learned all of that years ago. So it's one of the secrets that I've learned is building those relationships with people in whatever industry you're in.
Yeah.
And again, the music is, like John Brahaney said, the craft and business of songwriting and the music industry.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out here, too, is that one thing I've always loved about, your whole take on the networking is that, when I go out and speak to songwriting groups around the country or I have clients fly in from, all over the world and the States, often hear people say, well, it's only just who you know, and and they get that little bit of sour tone in their voice, and they don't realize, like, the networking that you're always talking about is it's enjoyable, it's fun.
It is. It's build networks.
Exactly.
Go up, meet people,
Yeah.
ask about
Right.
them.
Right.
It's not all about you, but ask about those people. Where you're
Exactly.
from, how long you've
Exactly.
been in town.
Yeah. Doesn't have anything to do with
advice.
grooming people. It has
No.
to do with making friends.
Right. Show
Literally.
a real interest to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah.
If you come to Nashville or any music center and think you've got it made, well, I can play guitar, I can write a great song. Big deal. Welcome to the world. Welcome to Nashville.
Yeah.
However, if you can learn to take an interest to people and have the idea,
Yep.
help me. How do you do this? How do you do that? People
Right.
will help you.
Exactly.
But if you haven't figured out already, good luck.
Well, you got that one right. You just remind me of a funny story. One day I was there with Richard Bennett and Mark Knopfler and Glenn Worf, and Knopfler was asking people, how they got started. And we turned to Glenn Worf, who's a real well-known bass player around here. In
Right.
fact, just won a Grammy for the producing country song with Chuck Ainley and
That's right.
I'm spacing, the
Was
guy.
it Leanne? Was it Leanne?
Yeah, right.
Leanne Womack?
Yeah,
Is that-
yeah, and Lynn's
Yeah.
husband. Anyway, so he said, so Glenn, he said, you've been playing bass all your life? Glenn said, no, sir. He said, I was the hottest guitar player in my state. He said, when I traveled to Nashville, he said, the first night here, I went out to a handful of songwriter nights. Not even hot bands, songwriter nights.
Right.
He said, I realized that night I was never going to make a living playing guitar in Nashville.
That's so true. I compare it to the Olympics. You can be the best guy in 3 states,
That's right.
and you come to Nashville, and you may not be the best on your block. Depending if you come here and get a roommate, you may not even be the best in your house,
house,
or your
that's true, yeah.
or your apartment.
So
You may
Glenn's-
not be the best guitar player, but yet you're the best in
Can't
three,
throw a rock
three
without
states.
hitting it.
Right.
So
Well,
Glenn
absolutely.
said, he asked a couple of players, he said, well, what instrument do you guys need around here, a lot of bands? And everybody said bass. So he said, I went out and bought a bass the next day. Wow. And one of the best and
Yeah.
best known bass players in town. But,
That's a great story.
yeah, no,
That's the reality. This is the Olympics. This is the best in the
wake-up
world.
call. Give us a fun fact about yourself, if you would, because I know we've talked about this before. I'm thinking about
Yeah.
So this
In the
is
mid '80s, I'm working in radio,
Yeah.
and I had some clients. They would come to town every month. It was the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance, out of Charlotte.
Yeah.
And the promoter, Sandy Scott, and I became friends. I'd pick him up at the airport, take him down to the hotel. Sometimes some of the wrestlers, the
Right.
Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, the Road Warriors, and, those guys, Nikita Koloff,
Yeah.
and so I got to know them again, building relationships,
Right.
not just a client. And I'd be
Right.
at the wrestling matches with them. And
Yeah.
one night, Sandy says, "Doak, we need a ring announcer next month." I said, I can do that, Sandy. Heck, I used to announce baseball, which was Babe Ruth baseball, back home, the city park. Hey, that's about the same, I think. I can do that. So the next month, the guys come to Charleston at the Civic Center. Now, I go out. I have a client that's a tuxedo dealer. I get the tuxedo, and I'm there waiting on him when he comes to town.
Doing it right.
Yeah,
That's right.
So we did the tuxedo, and the guys taught me how to do it, read, and it was a lot of fun. Closest to show business as I'll get in my life. And I did it for 2 years until I moved away when I
Wow.
moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. But Charleston and Huntington, West Virginia, and got to know some of the guys, and still friends with a couple of them. Relationships built back then.
Cool. Can you give us like a one line in your wrestling voice, if you remember the voice you used?
Weighing in at 232 pounds from Charlotte, North Carolina, the Nature Boy and world's heavyweight champion, Ric Flair.
All right,
And then
very
the
good.
crowd would go, woo!
Exactly.
Because he would.
Go wild.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was something. They would get into it and egg me on, and some of them. It was a lot of
That's great.
fun. I mean,
That's cool.
There was a night when we were in it. They had a cage match, the Great American Bash, and
Wait, I got a There's a photo of you in the ring.
Uh-oh. Somebody dug up some pictures from Facebook or somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's the Nature Boy Ric Flair backstage. I think I was having him sign a program for a friend.
That's cool. And you
I
and your
just
tux.
for my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, me in the tux.
And you and the tux. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. We were in a ring, and it was a cage match. And I went around. The door was on the other side. Went up and pulled the mic through and introduced Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, Crusher,
The
and
Russians.
Crusher, the
Yeah.
Russians. And then all of a sudden,
A lot of booze.
and the crowd's going wild because Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors are getting ready to come in the ring. All of a sudden, I look, and here they come running from the dressing room.
Yeah.
And they come through that, and bodies start flying, and I'm there in the ring. Needless to say, I did not introduce them, but my challenge was I'm on one side of the ring. Bodies are flying. Here comes these 300-pound guys
Yeah.
flying back. I just, whoa, Dusty, hang on a minute. And they started laughing as I'm making my way to
Of
the
course.
door.
Yeah.
And I go for the door. The guy's just getting ready to put the lock on the door. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. And he looked up, started to laugh, and let me out. And after the match, one of the photographers said, I wish I'd had a picture of your face. You thought you were locked in that ring. So, we all sort of laughed about it afterwards. And then, another time one guy comes one way, Wahoo McDaniel came one way, Tully Blanchard the other to the desk. And I have the championship belt. I'm holding it at the desk. I got the little bell that rings,
Wouldn't
the
be holding
hammer.
it.
So I kind of moved back and pulled back and said, give me that belt. And pulled me into the table, cut my forehead a little bit. And felt like one of them,
Well, yeah, they were counting on that.
They were, yeah. And 2 weeks later, they tried that trip again in Huntington, West Virginia. I left the belt, climbed back over the little bike ride. And afterwards, I said, you guys thought you had me again, and we all laughed.
You'd watch them, I'm sure.
So again, it was fun. Like close to the show business as I'll ever get is what I figured.
Yeah. So what's the best advice you've ever got?
Hey, well, I signed up for a Sunday morning seminar with a guy named Woody Bomar, great publisher in town. And one of the first things Woody did, I remember he got out the easel. We used to use these easels and markers. He said, okay, give me your favorite songwriters' names. And so we're all giving him these names, like we're impressing him that we know all of these writers, And he writes them down, and he says, okay, wherever you are, you are, and you are. He points at each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
He says, wherever you are on your journey, so were they.
Yeah.
And that really hit home. Okay, they'd written a bunch of lyrics, hadn't got cut. They had written a bunch of songs.
Yeah.
They were trying to learn, what did they do, they being the professionals and the hit writers, what did they do on their journey? But just knowing wherever you are on your journey, so were the pros, so were those people doing what you want to do. And it's finding out what they did and learning the proper ways and going to, if you're a songwriter, to join NSAI and finding mentors and people like that.
Another writer friend made the comment that he'd been in town a couple of years and publisher gave him advice. He said, why don't you start writing with really good demo singers? So next time he went out to cut a demo, he asked the demo singer if he'd write a song with him, and it was Garth Brooks.
Right.
So he wound up on Garth's first album too, of course, and that was his career. So,
Right.
Yeah. All these stories we're talking about are networking too.
Right, building those relationships, and who asked you to work with their artist? Who was it? Kim Williams.
Yeah.
Told me about being at the post office, and somebody, whether it was Bob or somebody, asked him to write with this new kid in town.
Oh yeah.
But saw him right there at the Oakland post office, which, talk about networking tips. That's where that's where I was before I came here today. And the Oakland post office at Hillsborough Village, 99% of Music Row gets their mail there. When I first moved to town, here's the advice Byron Hill gave me, because he'd become a mentor and a friend. When I was in Charlotte, he said, okay, do these things. He said, go get your license changed and your tags. I said, okay. He said, that way, if you go get in that line and go through all that, you think about moving back home, you're like, I'm not going through this again. Forget it. I'm staying. And the other piece of advice was, get a P.O. box at Oakland Post Office. And I've met more friends. I've made co-writers, publishers, people in the business that I've met there or ran into them again and became friends.
Well, that's cool. That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a couple really good co-writes from, and I mean, I don't ask. We just run into each other. Well, what are you doing? Well, we'll go over to Fido's, get something to drink. Yeah, let's go over there, and you get to know them or something.
Yep.
And that leads sometimes to good things.
Yeah.
And I've what's fun is I've given that advice. And I've ran into a couple different people when they were new to town. I've been in line at the post office and they're in line getting their P.O. box.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. What about an etiquette question?
Okay.
Now, we're not talking mismanners or eating. Talking about, let's say, a networking etiquette. So let's say someone buzzes into town and might be at an NSAI party, or maybe they're out at a songwriter night. Like, what would you recommend is good etiquette for approaching someone? So if any of our viewers, come to town,
Right.
or if they're local people already who aren't getting where they need to get, and
Sometimes if you run into a hit writer, they just play those songs that blow you away.
right,
And I still get blown away all the time.
yep,
But after they're through, you may go up and say, Victoria Shaw. Let's take for instance, you see her at the Bluebird or a benefit that she does or
you
something.
see her at swim pool all the time.
Exactly. And sometimes you just go up and say, you know what, you played the river, and God, I love that song. That really touches me. That motivated me. And thank you for playing that. I'm new to town. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll see you around. You don't want to bug them.
Right.
The worst thing you can do is, hey, here's my CD. You ought to listen to it. Here's my CD that you ought to write together.
Right.
That's the worst things you
But
can do.
be genuine in your compliments.
Right.
And make sure they know your name. And next time they'll probably remember you.
Yeah, oh, you'll see them. You'll see them everywhere. That's at a writer's night. I run into a bunch of people at, you run into them at a gas station. You run into them at the dry cleaners beside Iowa Post Office. You run into them at Kroger's. I used to run into all kinds of people in the business at the Bellevue Kroger's.
Yeah.
And so go there, live on that. No, but you're going to run into people. Just be nice to them.
Yeah. Right after we moved here, my first night, I went out to rent a video, and Billy Ray Cyrus was in there.
Right.
In the video. Of course, now I think you'd have to live in Malibu to run into him.
That's for you youngsters. That's Miley's dad.
That's right, Miley's dad. Right. Or Hannah Montana's dad.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, that's the thing. Nashville. That's why people love Nashville. You run into them at the YMCA's, wherever you are.
We ran into him once at a party or something, talked to him for a minute, just briefly, and left. And a couple years later, we wanted to bring an artist into Disney. This when he was heading up Disney. And we came in, and I started to introduce myself. And he said, "I know who you are, Gary."
Yeah.
So people. That's another thing about this town is that people really do care about relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, just treat people as nice, the way you'd want to be treated.
Exactly. That's you know what, that's perfect response, perfect advice, because I spent a few years working in LA in the film studios and stuff, and I wound up doing lunch 3 times with Clint Eastwood.
Okay.
And Donna Summers became a really good buddy, and the reason being is that I always treated them like they were normal people, and they're used to having most people either groom them or, like, oh, I'm not worthy.
Right.
And all they want to be treated as another nice, decent human being.
Right.
Don't treat them like they're, a mutant.
Right. So I'm going to interview you now.
Yeah, there you go.
What advice did you get from Clint Eastwood? A cool story.
I got an awesome story advice from him. Okay, I'll try and make it a little bit short, but this is the surprising thing, and this was at lunch with Ray Price and Clint and I, because we were working on Honky Tonk Man. Wow. So Ray Price said, "So Clint, you always want to be a big-time actor?" And Clint said, "No," he said, "I don't like acting." He said, I hate acting. He said, "In fact, I was in a school play, and I had one line, and I walked out on the stage, and I couldn't remember the line. I saw the crowd, and I got scared, and he said all the kids were snickering behind me, and he said, I told myself then I'd never get on stage again." So fast forward, he and his best buddy in the Army get out of the Army. And they're up in the Bay Area. And so they're going to go to Hollywood, and Clint was going to become a famous jazz pianist. That's all he ever wanted to do. A famous jazz pianist. His mother was a piano teacher, and he knew how to play by ear, and he knew all the jazz standards and everything.
Yeah.
So, and his buddy wanted to be the biggest movie star in the world. His buddy, by the way, was David that would play The Fugitive on TV.
Oh yeah, Jansen.
David Jansen, that was his best buddy. So they go down, and Clint's playing in a little jazz bar across the street from Burbank Studios, and David gets a job as an extra in the studios. So Clint's playing for tips only, and he's not making enough to pay his share of the rent or his share of the food bill. So after 2-3 months, his buddy's like, listen, you got to come over here and be an extra because, and Clint's, no, I can't. He's going, no, he said, you make great money, just stand in the background and make great money. And finally he had to do it because he got hungry. Right. So one thing led to another, and he kept getting bigger and bigger parts. Then he was offered the part of Rowdy Yates, Rawhide. And anyway, so fast forward to when he started doing those spaghetti westerns and started to become a big star, he had an idea, and he thought, hey. So he started financing his own films, which meant that he could take it at his own pace and call all the shots. So he started putting famous musicians in every single movie. Remember those Every Which Way You Can?
Oh, yeah.
3 of those with Jerry Reed.
Oh, yeah.
There was always a little country bar that was famous, country musician there. And so he would hang around and play and jam with the musicians a lot on the set and stuff. And then he did the one about Bird, got to hang out with all the jazz, Charlie Parker and all that. And he did Play Misty Me for me too, which was the radio one. And then he did Honky Tonk Man, where he got to hang out with all the Grand Ole Opry. So point is, here was a guy who, and now he has been doing his own film scores, like Mystic River. Sure. That was all his jazz piano playing. But here's a guy, and when we did we did the recording studio scene in A Honky Tonk Man, we were supposed to be Bob Wills, Texas Playboys. Mm-hmm. Johnny Gimbel was in it, Tommy Aesop, and Merle Travis, who is my childhood musical hero. So anyway, that scene in Hollywood would have taken a morning to shoot, 3 hours, because 5-minute scene. We spent 3 days doing it because we just spent all day long jamming, playing music. And Clint had the Sandman Snake a little mic under my piano. I was on a Grand, and he record everything. And we just pass it around, they go, okay, Merle, what song you want to do? And he'd go, he'd Sweet Temptation, he'd take off and we'd all jam and then pass on to the next guy. Just hours and hours of it, And so Clint was a guy who took lemons and made unimaginable lemonade out of it,
Absolutely.
I mean, he just realized a way that he could take something that he was good at and slide it over into the music. And I got to play four-hand boogie woogie with him. That was fun, just hanging out.
Great experience. You just never know. You come to Nashville to do one thing, you don't know where it's going to lead. For instance, for me,
it's true.
I wanted to come here and write songs, which I still am, and so forth. But I'm blessed.
And you got a dozen cuts,
And I didn't know anything much about computers.
Right.
And I moved here October 15th, 2002. At the end of January 2003, I'm in San Diego. I went out and did a workshop and was relaxing, getting a little sunshine.
Ooh, nice.
The last night I'm there, went down to see some friends in Orange County, Cliff and Bev Nelson.
Right.
And they brought a couple friends from LA came down. Again, you never know. One thing leads to another. That's because I'd been the NSAI coordinator in Charlotte. When I was in Orange County, we were having dinner, and I'm giving them ideas to help their NSAI workshop.
Cool.
How do you get more members? And here's some fun things to do. And one guy says, a guy named Rex says, Doak, why don't you do what I do? So what's that? Says, invite your friends to send you an email about where they're playing in Nashville.
Yeah.
And collect them all and send them back out to everybody. About 2 or 3 weeks earlier, I invited a couple of friends over to my house, and about 30 of us got together. I said, look, we're all new. We got to get to know each other, work with each other. That's what the pros did.
Yeah.
And so I come back from California. I didn't know how to copy and paste. I didn't know formatting, none of that.
Yeah.
But I knew how to send an email. I'd learned that. And so I sent an email. Hey, let me know where you're playing. That comes back. Okay, here's where we're playing. So I just put it together.
Yeah.
You know, Monday night, here's who's playing where. Tuesday, here's who's playing where. And from those 30, and then it goes into, as the list grows, I'm sending these emails. They think I'm spamming. So I get this call from Comcast. We're cutting you off. You're on our blacklist. You're spamming. I'm like, and they leave a phone, you know, call us back. I call back. What it means, I leave a message. They're going to call me back within 24 hours. Great. And they called back, and I said, I got a couple questions. What's that? I said, hey, I'm on your blacklist. Put me on your white list. All these people asked for this. And number two, what does spamming mean? And they started laughing. They think, okay, this guy, he doesn't know what he's doing. I said, look, they're asking, they're requesting this. So they walked me through how to put together groups and one thing after another. And I'm that poster child. God sends smarter people on your journey, which he does. And that revolutionized to, you know, having over 3,200 subscribers. I'm running that, selling sponsorships, putting together events that all found out through this Nashville Muse.
Yeah.
Years later, the Nashville Muse led to the formation, beginning of Music Starts Here.
Mm-hmm.
And now Nashville Muse is part of that site.
Yeah.
Again, you don't know. And that has helped keep me going with the events and sponsorships through all of the years. I'm just so blessed. But again, you give in this business.
Yeah.
They were asking for advice, how to build a better workshop. I was trying to give them. And then this guy, God rest his soul, Rex, just said, hey, why don't you do this? And I ended up about a month later, came up with the Nashville Muse as the name.
Well, it reminds me of, isn't it in a Beatles lyric, the love you get is equal to the love you give?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
You give and you get back multiplied many times.
Yeah.
You know, and having that led into listening to someone come to the house, and I had a roommate. This guy from New York's coming, talking about up in Greenwich Village. They had this event, Gary. He said, every Monday you'd go to this guy's apartment, and he'd have spaghetti, but you had to play a new song to get your dinner. And I just started thinking that would be cool. Like that afternoon, it was a Sunday. Cool. I got this idea: Sunday dinner with your songwriting family.
Yeah.
And so I invited those 30 people to come to my house a month earlier. I said, "Come on over." And that is what became the third Sunday at 3.
That's cool.
And a couple of weeks later, I had this idea at the end of 10 Pan South. And I created this event called Guitar BQ. At the end of the 10 Pan South, that Sunday that ended it, I just said, hey, come on over. I bought 50 pounds of barbecue. And I'd invited people, again, through this email, through this Nashville Muse, through these people, reach out and help people. And that first Guitar BQ in 2003 in April, about 150 people came.
Wow.
And so that became an annual event for the next. It ended up being Guitar BQ 7, which brought about 600 to the house. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's it. That's enough.
And then that name is so Nashville.
Yeah. Yes, it is. So again, you don't know where you're going to get ideas from, but that's what happened. But those things have helped keep me on my journey. I've met a lot of people. Again, you give in this town, and a lot of times it comes back multiplied.
Yeah, it's important to get out of the house. Get out. And
or invite them, but don't start anything with food because they'll come back every month. Don't do it. I had to move for the third Sunday to end.
It's like feeding cats.
Yes, yes. Yes. Don't put out the milk. But
that's good.
But all of that has led to some of my favorite friends, my best friends, co-writes, getting songs cut, things like that.
Yeah, I was just trying to remember where we first met. I'm not sure. It might have been at your third.
I think it was.
I think we came to your third Sunday.
Yeah.
I think somebody said, hey, you guys need to come over to this. Yeah. I think that's how we first met.
Yeah.
Oh, it was John Brahaney who, on one of his trips here, who said, you guys got to come over. That's
right.
who it was.
So John came to town.
Yeah.
And I said, John, you could stay at my house.
Right, exactly.
That's where it was.
That's
And I said,
where it was.
John, I said, what do we, because when I met John, when I came here, John was speaking at the Songwriters Guild.
Yeah.
And I wanted to come to thank him because the second edition had just come out.
Yeah.
I said, I would go thank that man. He really helped me. And so at the end of that evening, we walked out to the parking lot. I probably gerbed him. I didn't know any difference. But I just kept talking to him. I said, thanking him. And I said, I've got this book. Well, the thing is, Joanne, his wife, used to be in radio, and we had a couple of mutual friends.
That's cool.
And so I said, would you sign the book? And he looks at, God, it's a first edition of my book. And I told him the story about someone coming to Charlotte and giving me that book. He said, you know what? What are you doing? I said, you tell me. And we went over to a restaurant. He said, when I come to town, I like to go to a restaurant. You may have been there.
Yeah.
And he invites his friends to come, and everybody meets in that one place.
Right, about a dozen, 15 or something. Yeah.
Right.
That's yeah. We may have met there, but I think we met at your house. I'm not sure. One of the two. So,
and so when John and Joanne were coming to town a year later, I said, look, if you want, you can stay at my place. And I said, John, if you want, on that Friday or Saturday, why don't you invite your friends to the house instead of going to a restaurant? He's like, I don't know. I said, John, you do the invites. I'm not inviting anyone. Any of my friends, this is for you. And so we hosted that event, and I met you and Robin and so many other, Eddie Schwartz at one of those, and so many other people that I
a lot of
am
LA
grateful
transplants.
for. Right, they all came, and that's how I met a lot of them.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's true. So John's, it's still a good book. Sean's gone. Joanne's still around, though.
She is. I talk to her every couple of months, and I love her, and we miss John. But if I always recommend that book. I've recommended it hundreds and hundreds of times. It's The Craft and Business of Songwriting, John Brahaney, first, second, and third edition.
And it is huge.
Yes.
This is a wealth here.
Yes.
It's like buying an encyclopedia set.
It is. It is, yes. So thank you, John Brahaney. You're still right here.
Very good.
Yes.
Excellent. Anything else that you'd like to cover? So we want to make sure we get all the links, on the video too.
Well,
so
we can do the links. Do you want to talk about any of the songs or anything?
Yeah,
or?
let's talk about that.